Salesforce has made it clear that Flow is the future of automation in Salesforce, and that Process Builder and workflow rules will soon be phased out. By the end of 2022, you will not be able to create new process on Process Builder. Salesforce will continue introducing and improving the features to migrate the existing Process Builder and workflow rules to Flow. So, if you have not worked with Flow before and want to learn more about Salesforce Flow, you have come to the right place. Let us first get some of the terminology clear. I'm explaining this as some of the terms are used interchangeably by people. Salesforce Flow is the product that encompasses building, managing, running flows and processes. Flow Builder is a point and click tool for building the flows. We will be completing most of these exercises using Flow Builder. Flow is the actual part of Salesforce Flow that automates a business process by collecting the data and doing something in your Salesforce org or an external system. Let's get cracking with creating a sample flow. Go to Setup and type in Flows in the quick find box. Click on Process Automation Flows. We will start with a very simple flow, and in no time you'll see yourself getting more confident and creating more complex flows using screen flows, actions, and multiple elements to handle the most complicated business scenarios as well. But for a start, let's begin with something very simple. Here, we will focus more on getting to know the elements of a flow rather than the actual logic of a business scenario. When you click on New Flow, you'll be presented with this dialog box asking you to choose what kind of flow you want to create. You can also explore some templates later on, but for this demo, we will start with a blank canvas. Now, a screen flow guides the user through a business process that is launched from Lightning Pages. It is useful in a scenario where you have to gather some data from the user when the process is run. A record triggered flow launches when a record is created, updated, or deleted, and it runs in the background. We'll be creating a record triggered flow. The first step is to configure the start element of the flow. We tell the flow which is the object whose records should trigger the flow. Let's say our object is opportunity. Now you configure the trigger. Do you want the flow to run when the record is created, updated, or deleted? We will select when a record is created or updated so that both of these actions will trigger our flow. Next, we set the entry conditions. We do not want the flow to run unnecessarily for every record created or updated in opportunity object. Maybe there are thousands of opportunities created, and it would be a waste of computing resources to call the flow if all those records do not meet the criteria we want. The condition requirements logic can be and, or you can even create a custom condition logic like condition 1 and 2 or 3. You can also add formulas now. That's a new feature that has been introduced in summer 21. In our case, we want this flow to trigger when all conditions are met. The field we are evaluating is amount, and we want the amount of the opportunity greater than or equal to 1 million. We'll add a condition, and we also want the type of the opportunity to equal a new customer. When you select a pick list field in your entry conditions, it shows you the pick list values that you want the condition to meet. We'll select new customer. Now we could have used formulas if we wanted the condition to evaluate, let's say something like a close date of the opportunity should be within 90 days. So that's where we would use a formula where close date is less than equal to today as a function plus 90. We'll not be using that for now. So with these two conditions, let's now understand these two options. When to run the flow for the updated records. In the first option, the flow will run even for an existing record that had previously met the entry conditions and the flow had already run for that record. In the second option, if the record was already meeting the entry conditions and the flow had run once on that record, the flow will not run if an unrelated update is made on the record. The flow will run only when the record is updated from not meeting the conditions to now meeting the entry conditions. Let us select the second option for our demo. The next option to select is essentially a before save and an after save option for the flow. If you select the before save option, it allows you to perform fast field updates on the record that triggers the flow. The record is updated before it is saved to the database. After save option gives you more flexibility to update any record in another object as well. For example, updating the account record based on the opportunity record. And with this option, you can also perform actions like sending emails, etc. The simple flow I am going to create for the demo can actually use the fast field updates, as we are only updating a field on the triggering record. But I'll select the second option for the demo, as I want to show you all the elements that are available in flows. So let's click on done. So that is your start element that has been configured with two conditions, and it will run when a record is created or updated on the opportunity object. What we are seeing here is the auto layout format, and it is easier to build the flow with. If you're familiar with creating flows, you can use free form as well. It will show you all the elements on the toolbox, and you can drag them onto the canvas to build the flow and then manually connect the two elements. The elements available are interaction elements. So action will allow you to perform actions like sending an email. A subflow can be used to call another flow, and this is useful in preventing a single flow from becoming very complex and unwieldy. Under the logic elements, you have assignment. This is where you would create and assign values to a variable. The variables can be collection variables or individual variables. The decision element helps us to configure if then else statements in our flow. The loop allows us to process multiple records that have been fetched and perform the defined steps for every record in that collection. And you can also perform sort and filter on collection variables. The pink elements are the ones that are making the actual changes in our Salesforce org database. These are the data elements which trigger DML statements, and you should be very careful in using these, as first of all, these are changing the data in your Salesforce org. And secondly, it is also possible to hit the Salesforce governor limits if we make too many DML statements in our flow. So as a rule of thumb, never use a pink element inside a loop. Always do all of your loop processing on variables and collections, and then using the collection or the variable, make a single DML statement like update or create records outside the loop. The button bar on the top provides us information about the flow, like is the flow active or not, how long ago it was saved, etc. And it also allows us to debug and run our flow and show us any warnings when we save the flow. So let us switch back to the auto layout format and start building our flow. So when the flow starts, let us add a get records statement to fetch records from the account object that are related to this opportunity. For label, we'll say get account record. The object is account, and we filter the account records that are fetched as account ID equals the account ID in the opportunity record that we are working with in the flow interview. We only need the first account that matches, and we will let Salesforce automatically store all the fields. Now note the API name of this element, as we'll be using it later to work with the account record fields. Click on done. Now that we have an account record to work with, let us add a decision element. We want to check what industry this account belongs to and then decide some outcomes based on what we find. So put the label as check account industry. For the first outcome, put the label as chemical, and the resource we are using is the get account record industry field. And the value of this field should be chemicals to hit this outcome. Similarly, create another outcome by clicking the plus sign. Here we want to check if the industry field on the account record is biotechnology. Again, the resource we want is the account from the get account record, and the industry field should be equal to the value biotechnology. We are able to see all the pick list values because the industry is a pick list field. So we select biotechnology and we leave the default outcome labeled as it is. Click on done. Now you can see the decision element and its multiple outcome paths. Next, we decide what happens if each of the path is hit. So if the account industry is chemical, we want to add an element to update the triggering record, which means we'll be updating the opportunity record that triggered this flow. We want to update the competitor field in the opportunity record. If the industry is chemical, we update the competitor name as Big Pharma. Use the opportunity record that triggered the flow. The field we want to update is main competitors. It's a custom field that I have created, and the value of this field should be Big Pharma. So when the flow hits this element, it will put the value Big Pharma into this field on the opportunity record. Click done. Now, if the industry is biotech, we want to add one more decision element here. Here we want to check the country of the account. So give the label as check country. The outcome label would be country is USA. The condition we define will be the resource we use will be the account from the get account record. And the field we are after is billing country. And if the billing country equals USA, we change the conditions to or, add a condition, or billing country equals US, add one more condition, same field, billing country equals United States of America. So if the billing country contains any of these values, USA, US, or United States of America, the condition will be met and it will trigger this outcome. Next, we can change the label of the default outcome in this case as country is not USA and click on done. So now we have a second decision loop and two more paths to evaluate. So if the country is USA, we want to update the triggering record and we want to update, we give the label as update US competitor. The field we want to update is main competitors. The value will be US bio. Done. So we got one update record here. Similarly, if the country is not USA, we update the triggering record. We update the non-US competitor name. The field to update is competitor, main competitors. The value is world bio. Done. Now, if the industry is not chemical or biotech, the first decision element will hit the default outcome, and you can take more actions on this path as well. For our demo purpose, there is nothing to update, so we'll just leave this path as it is. Now our flow is ready. When a record is created or updated on the opportunity object, and it meets these two conditions, as the first step, it will fetch the account records. It will check the industry field on the account record. And if the industry of the account is chemical, it will update the competitor name as Big Pharma. If the industry is biotech, it will perform another evaluation by checking the country field of the account record. And if the country is USA, it updates the US competitor name. If the country is not USA, it updates the non-US competitor name. If the account industry is not chemical or biotech, it executes the default outcome and exits the flow without doing anything. So let's save the flow now. Give the flow name, update opportunity competitor, and save it. Now it shows us that version 1 of our flow is saved and it is inactive. Now before activating the flow, let us debug it. Here we can run the flow as if the record is created or updated, and we can select one of the existing opportunity records to debug the flow. Let's select an existing opportunity for Burlington Textiles. Let's run the flow and it gives us the debug details. Let's expand this. How the interview started. The debug run was triggered as if the opportunity record was created, and then it evaluated the start conditions. The triggering record didn't meet the conditions, so the flow did not run. So it is working as expected. The amount in this opportunity was not greater than equal to $1 million, and hence it will not trigger this flow at all. Now let us debug again, and I have created an opportunity which will actually trigger the flow. So we have a large opportunity with a new customer. Let's run the flow with this. And this time we can see the flow has run and we can see which path the flow has executed. So the start conditions were evaluated. The amount was more than $1 million and the type was new customer. So it went to the next step, got the account record, made a decision, checked the account industry. It was found as chemical. Hence it proceeded on this path and it performed an update records on the opportunity to update the competitor name as Big Pharma, and it exited the flow. Since we are only debugging the flow, it has rolled back any changes to add, delete, or modify records, and gives us some more details about how the flow was run and how the interview finished. You would actually define more test cases to ensure all the paths of the flow are tested, and once you're satisfied with the testing, you would go ahead and activate the flow. Now it shows us on the button bar that version 1 is now active, which means if we go and update any opportunity or create any opportunity to meet the flow start conditions, it's now going to actually make these updates in our Salesforce org. So that was a very simple flow that we defined. And I hope this video gets you started with exploring more flows on your own. I will be making more complex flow scenarios from some use cases that I will be defining. If there are any specific questions on flows or any particular scenarios that you would like to see a demo of, do leave a comment and I'll see if I can include that in the scenarios that I'm creating. Meanwhile, do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button to get notified of the new videos that are coming out.